Shalom, welcome to 6 by 6, 6 minutes a day, 6 days a week, and you have a full idea here from the Likutei Sichos from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And one of the ideas this week is that the Jewish people are approaching Israel, and therefore Hashem, the Almighty, promises them, you will inherit the land. And every person will get a portion of the land. More, it was an agricultural society, surely 3,000 years, over 3,000 years ago. They weren't going to be the doctors, lawyers, and accountants as we have today. People are going to have their own land, farm it, and eat from their own produce. And that they were assured that they're going to be in the land. Now, there's an argument between Rambam, Maimonides, and the Ramban, Nachmanides, if inheriting the land or living in the land is a mitzvah, which would mean that when all the Jewish people in the time of the Bible, they all went into Israel, and even some stayed on the east side of the Jordan River, but that was incorporated into Israel also, but everybody was there. Now the issue is, of course, Ramban lived 1,000 years ago, and the Jewish people been in exile, first from destruction of the first temple. They went into Babylonia for the most part because that was the major empire at that time. Nebuchadnezzar, that was the leading empire, so they went there. And then after the second temple, the Jewish people went also to Babylonia, but they also went to Rome to start the European. Really, Jewish people, the diaspora, started after the first temple. That's why you see these ancient communities in Yemen and Ethiopia and India, and they really count themselves from the times of the first temple. Not all the Jewish people went back to Israel after the second temple was rebuilt. In any case, the argument between the Rambam and Ramban, Maimonides and Nachmanides is settling the land a mitzvah or not, which would be that if you have to do the mitzvah, then you have to do it. It's difficult. You may not find it convenient to pack your bags and go there. Is it a mitzvah or not? So we found, of course, bottom line is so many Gedolim, so many great tzaddikim. And look in Europe, and they didn't run to live in Israel, even though, of course, in the 1800s, for example, was very difficult. There were Jewish and Orthodox Torah communities in Israel in the 1800s, but it was very, very difficult. And they did, of course, it wasn't the Israeli state then in the 1800s. And number two, was very poverty-stricken. But still, again, like I say, difficulties aside, you have to do a mitzvah, you do the mitzvah. Some people find it hard in their business to keep Shabbos. Doesn't mean, all right, well, it's difficult, I'm not going to keep Shabbos. You have to keep Shabbos even if there are difficulties. It's the same thing with living in Israel. But we see that many Gedolim, or most really, a great tzaddikim, did not run to live in Israel. But still, this is the argument we're going to be dealing with. Is it a mitzvah to live in Israel or not? So therefore, the Rambam, that they do deal with this issue, and they talk about it. And Rambam's he actually lived first in Spain and then in Egypt. But in any case, he does codify and says even if the majority of the city, which would be like an Arab town today in Israel, that they would is non-Jewish, still it's a bigger mitzvah to live there than if you're in a major Jewish metropolis like Muncie for Spring Valley, for example, and that the majority are Jews, and still it'd be better to live with the minority of Jews in Israel. So that's very interesting. Of course, the question in its own right, if that's what the Maimonides says, why did he live in Egypt, which is it's a classic question over here. But we're going to actually throw out to you in the first session here, also it's since it is a mitzvah to live in Israel, therefore it's forbidden to leave Israel. And we'll get into it for only a few specific reasons. It's the Holy Land, and like we say, since it is a mitzvah to live there, why are you leaving Israel to be without a mitzvah? So therefore, we're good. That's the issues this week. We're going to be dealing with that within a few other issues, very interesting ideas that the Rebbe brings out and answers to them, and we'll continue with that tomorrow.